Now here's what I know this morning, this to be an absolute truth. Wherever your mind goes, the rest of you is going to follow. Whatever you set your mind on, that's what's going to happen in your life. You see, your thoughts can lead you. Your thoughts are going to lead you. They're going to guide your life. They're going to set the course for your life. They're going to point you in a certain direction. They're going to cause you to have certain attitudes and certain perspectives. Your thoughts will even determine how productive you're going to be on a daily basis. I think our thoughts have some power. And the thing I've learned about my thinking is that my thoughts influence the overall quality of my everyday in every area of my life. If I'm successful, my success began with a thought. But you know, every time that I'm a failure, my failures also began with a thought. I don't know if you realize that or not, but your failures actually begin with a thought. Now, they may not be the thought to fail. I think I'll wake up this morning and go fail. Sure would be great to be a failure. I think I'll... You know what they say, if you plan to fail, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So sometimes just not planning to do anything is an attempt at failure. But our thoughts are so powerful. They're so powerful that whatever we think is real and whatever we believe is real to you and to me, regardless if it's true or not, that thing becomes real. It becomes real to you and to me. And if you think that something is true, if you believe it to be real, you're going to respond to it and you're going to live according to it and act according to it as though it was real. As you think within your heart, that's what you'll become. Wherever your mind goes, the rest of you is going to follow. It's a powerful truth, and your thinking, the way that you think about things, is going to affect every area of your life, your relationships, your self-image, your finances. Anybody need some finances in here? Stop thinking poverty. You know, your thinking can affect your health. Some of you need to get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Rise up and say, you know, I'm going to be in good health. Your thinking can affect your productivity. It can affect your priorities. It can affect your ability to enjoy life. In other words, we become what we think. Well, I don't like what I'm becoming. Let me tell you this much, folks. It's impossible to change your life unless you change your thinking. But you have the ability to choose and decide what you're going to think about. You have the ability to make a decision if you're going to think things that are going to be productive or things that are going to drag you down. You see, you don't have to passively meditate on whatever comes through your mind. Did you know that? If you let your mind wander, anybody ever let their mind wander? I let my mind wander once and then I couldn't find it. It just wandered off. You know, if you let your mind wander, it will do that. And some of you have let your mind wander so long that you don't even know what you're thinking anymore. And so you're not bound, you're not obligated to think the things that just whatever comes through your mind. I mean, some of the things that come to our mind, some of the things that flow through our mind, they've been there all of our life. They've come from the environment, the home that we were raised in. They've come from the people that were around us that spoke into our life. You know, if you had a father or you had a parental figure that spoke into your life that you were going to be successful, you probably believed that. But on the other hand, if your dad was always telling you you're a sorry, no good for nothing, guess what? That's what's playing automatically in your mind all the time. Now, I don't advocate this morning that, you know, if you're laying in bed on Saturday mornings and your wife is saying, get up and mow the grass, and you're laying there, I don't want to mow the grass. You can't blame your parents for the fact that you don't want to mow your grass. That's laziness. You know, some people say, well, I just can't because my parents were so bad. Quit blaming everybody else for your problems. But sometimes our thinking, if we're not careful, that autopilot will kick in and we'll think the things we've always thought because that's what we've always thought. I met a woman once who thought that the way that when you get married, the way that you work a man is you control him. You tell him what you want to do. That was how she was raised, and that's what she thought. Now, if you ladies are like in agreement with me on that head bob thing, maybe that's what works, and I'm not dumb enough to know it yet. But, if that's working, go ahead. But, some of the thoughts that we think, they're just autopilot thoughts. We think them because that's what we've always thought. Some of the thoughts that go through your mind actually come from the devil. Sometimes it's the devil that we've opened the door to through the things that we allow into our mind. But the thoughts that we think actually come from the devil. They may sound like us. They may sound like it's our voice telling us, but they're not godly thoughts, and they didn't come from God. And they're not thoughts that you necessarily learned. And the thing you've got to realize is you are not bound and obligated to think those thoughts. So you can actually grab a hold of a thought and say, you know what, thought? I am not going to think you. We take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. Did anybody ever have a mama that was full of wisdom? Come on. My mama used to say, engage your brain before you engage your mouth. What I would say to you is, every thought that you think, run it through the Word of God first, before it comes out of your mouth. Because there are some thoughts that you think that don't need to be spoken. There are some thoughts that you think that don't need to be in your mind. Well, they're my thoughts, Pastor. How dare you tell me not to think my thoughts? Some of them don't have good origins. Some of them don't have good place. Some of them don't line up with the Word of God. And that Scripture is telling us to take captive every thought and make it obedient to Christ. In other words, you can choose the things that you think. Now, I've got to be honest with you this morning. It's not easy. Choosing the right thought when we've thought the old wrong thought for so long isn't necessarily easy, but it is possible. It's possible to do. We can take bad thoughts captive and we can replace our bad thoughts with good thinking. It's going to be a battle. In fact, it's not just a battle, it is the battle. The battle for your soul, the battle for your life is going on between your ears. Will you believe God? Will you believe what you think? Or will you believe what someone else has put in there? Most of your walk with God boils down to your thinking. Anybody want to win the battle? If you're going to win the battle, it all begins with where we're going this morning. One simple word, it begins with a simple word, and that word is attitude. Are y'all familiar with that word? That word gets thrown around quite a bit today, you know what I mean? It's used in all kind of contexts like, girl, don't give me that attitude. Or you see a person that's really got it all together and they're walking with a certain walk, they've got the dress, they're playing the part and think, "Ooh, man, that guy's got attitude." Football players, they've got to have a certain attitude. Well, when I talk about the word attitude this morning, what I'm referring to is a system of thoughts within your brain, a mindset, a way of thinking, a mindset in which each and every one of us has, through which we approach the very things of life. And for each of us, that mindset is different. In other words, my mindset right now might not be the same as yours. And we might be in the same situation, but we're gaining from that situation different perspectives. You know the old saying, is the glass half empty or half full, right? All depends on your attitude. You say, Pastor, that's 3/4. It all depends on your perspective. It all depends upon your attitude, how you're going to approach the things of life. It all depends on how you're going to see it. And so right now, some of you are sitting there, and some of you are hot, and some of you are cold, and some of you are tired, and some of you are interested, and some of you are bored. But your attitude this morning about this situation right now is going to determine if you're going to hear the truth of God or not. Like we said about worship, God's already here. It's our perspective and our attitude that allows us to worship Him and begin to sense His presence. We have the opportunity, the responsibility to choose that attitude, what we're going to have within us. Now, Let's say that you have a bad attitude about your job. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands, but maybe there's some people in here you just don't like your job. And you show up every morning on Monday and you go to work that week and you tell the people that are around you, man, this is the most boring job on the face of the earth. And my boss is so incredibly demanding, and you try to get other employees to rally with you. Don't you think he's demanding? Don't you think he's a bad boss? I could do a better job than that guy. They need to pay me more for what I do around this place. I don't get paid what I'm worth. That's why I don't do that much. No one appreciates me here. I'll do it, but I'm not going to like it. How can a person who thinks like that ever enjoy their job? How can a person who thinks like that become positive or make a valuable contribution to their workplace? Let me tell you, in a word, they can't. If that's your thinking about your job on Monday morning, you will never be positive about your job. You'll never be happy in your job, and you'll never be able to make a valuable contribution. And I would ask you this morning, would you give a person like that a raise or a promotion? I wouldn't. But what about the person who shows up on Monday and says, man, I'm so thankful that I've got a job. I'm grateful that I've got a job. And you know what? I'm going to pray for my boss and I'm going to be a blessing to him. I told my grandson that when he started school. I said, son, you've got a choice this year. You can either become the teacher's pet and just make her love you or not. And the thing about it is, if you make her love you, if you just become most highly favored in the classroom, even when you're bad, she'll blame someone else. I did tell him that. Yes, I did. I mean, I'm not saying that you'll be bad all the time, but even when you blow it and make a mistake, it's true though. She won't believe, you'll be such an angel, you'll be so favored. I can't believe it. It had to have been somebody else's fault. I said, on the other hand, if you are bad all the time, if you start off bad, even when you're good, you'll be bad. Well, guess which direction he took? We have a meeting this week. Yes, sir. Man, I'm going to work and earn what they pay me here. I am so glad to be a part of the team of folks that I work for. This may not be the best environment to work in, but I'm going to do my best. As far as it depends upon me, I'm going to live at peace with everybody. I'm going to do my best to do the best job possible. You see, it's up to you. And you have the privilege and you have the responsibility of choosing your attitude no matter the circumstance. No matter what you're going through. The key is you can choose it. You see, attitude doesn't just happen. It doesn't just happen. It's a product of your choice. And if your mind is on autopilot, if you're not taking captive every thought, if you're reacting to things to the way that you've always reacted to them, or the way that everybody else has reacted to them, you have to make a conscious decision to change it. To take captive those thoughts. You can change it. And there's a biblical model that will help you do it. I want you to go to Romans chapter 12. Now, I'm not preaching this morning. I'm just reading it to you. But this is a biblical example of how change happens and how we should change our mind. Change our thinking. If you're going to change your life, if you don't like where your life is this morning right now, change your thinking and your life will follow. Romans chapter 12, verse 2. This is what it says. Do not conform any longer to the pattern of this world. Look at it. But be transformed by what? By the renewing of your mind. Then you'll be able to test and approve what God's will is, His good and pleasing and perfect will. Now look at verse 3. For the grace given me, I say to every one of you, do not think, everybody say think. Don't think of yourself more highly than you ought, but rather think of yourself with sober judgment in accordance with the measure of faith that God has given you. Thinking is a very important thing. How you think about a situation is important. Now look over in verse 12. How you think about the situation matters. Now look at verse 12. Be joyful in hope. Yeah, but Pastor, you don't know what I have to face tomorrow morning. Be joyful. It's not a suggestion. Change your thinking. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction. Be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, faithful in prayer, sharing with God's people who are in need. Practice hospitality. Look at verse 14. Bless those who persecute you. Bless and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Mourn with those who mourn. Live in harmony with one another. Do not be proud, but be willing to associate with people of low position. Don't be conceited. Do not repay evil for evil, but be careful to do what is right in the eyes of everybody. Verse 18, if it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Don't take revenge. Now here's a thought that runs contrary to our thinking most of the time. If your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he's thirsty, give him something to drink. Verse 21, do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. You see, that runs contrary to our thinking, but this is the scriptural encouragement. If you're going to change your life, you've got to change your thinking, and here are some things to think about. If you need some homework this morning, take Romans chapter 12 home and read it again. Say, Lord, help me to apply this thing for my life. There's a fellow that some of you are acquainted with named John Maxwell, a writer and author and teacher on leadership. Maxwell used to have a saying. He said, your attitude determines your altitude. You know what altitude is when you're talking about an airplane pilot. Altitude is the elevation or the height that airplane is flying. And your attitude is going to determine in your life how high you're going to fly. You're not going to soar with eagles, Maxwell used to say, if you're going to think like a turkey. You see, a positive attitude is going to give you lift, but a negative attitude is going to drag you down. So if you want to keep your altitude in life, let me give you 5 things this morning, if you're making notes, very quickly, that are going to help you. 5 tips that are going to help you keep your altitude in life. Number 1, no matter what happens, or no matter what might happen, predetermine. Write that down in your notes, say predetermine. To go through it with a good attitude. You know, sometimes you have to predetermine on Sunday afternoon, I'm going to have a good week this week. When I wake up on Monday morning, I'm not going to let the small things bother me, but I'm going to predetermine to have a right or a good attitude. You know, we spend a lot of time worrying about what might happen. And maybe we should spend a little less time worrying about what might happen and spend some time thinking about how I'm going to respond rather than respond on autopilot the way that we always have. You see, it's a whole lot easier to maintain a right attitude than to have to try and regain it once you've got into a bad one. Second thing is, remember that bad times don't last forever. If it's bad now, it's not going to last forever. This is what the Bible says. Therefore, we don't lose heart. Though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen. For what is seen is temporary. It's not going to last forever, but what is unseen is eternal. Now let me give you this third tip very quickly. Don't make a major life decision in the middle of a crisis. If you have a bad day at work, or if something changes at work, or if they've changed your schedule or they've increased your workload, don't walk in and say, well, I'm just going to quit. Had enough. Give it some time to settle. If you're sick, don't make a major life decision. If you've had a major crisis in your life, don't make a major life decision. Because you're probably going to make the wrong decision because you're not thinking clearly at that moment. Number 4, very quickly, try to maintain a God perspective. You have to understand, God sees things differently than we do, doesn't He? God doesn't see from the same perspective as we do. God sees from the beginning to the end. We just see where we are right now. Sometimes we get in a place where we can't see the forest for the trees. And the crisis that we're in right now will keep us from seeing clearly. So number 5, so we've got to keep in touch with God. As Isaiah wrote about God, he says, concerning God, my thoughts are not your thoughts, and my ways are not your ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so my ways are higher than your ways. In other words, God's got a thinking that isn't necessarily our thinking. And if we're going to keep a God's perspective, we've got to stay in touch with God. When you don't understand, say, God, help me understand. If you've got a situation going on at home, say, Lord, I'm trying the best I can. It's not working out. Help me understand, Lord. Maybe He's just got to change your perspective and your thinking a little bit. It's all about attitude. I once read a story of an organization, a foundation, whatever it was, and they were offering a bounty of $5,000. $5,000 apiece for every wolf that could be captured alive. Now, there was a couple of good old boys. They read about that. $5,000, that's a lot of money, isn't it? Per wolf. Wolf's got to be captured alive, but these two good old boys, Sam, we'll call them Sam and Jed. And they set out into the mountains and they're hunting wolves, man. They're going after these. Now, they got to catch them alive and bring them in, $5,000 apiece for every wolf. They've been out in the mountains hunting these wolves for several days, and exhausted from these days of hunting, one night they don't even get in the tents. They don't even get in their sleeping bags. They just fall asleep under the stars. Beautiful night. Why not? And in the middle of the night, old Sam, he's woke up by a sound. It's the sound of about 50 wolves that are surrounding him and Jed. Now, I'm talking about hungry wolves. I'm talking about eyes blazing and teeth just dripping. And realizing the situation, Sam begins to nudge his buddy. He's like, Jed, you hear that? Jed, wake up, Jed. We're rich. That's the power of a positive perspective, isn't it? It's all in the way you're willing to see it. Attitude enables you to make the best of every single situation. It gives you the power over the circumstance rather than allowing the circumstance to have the power over you. But it's your choice. No one can make that choice for you. And your mind can either be a junkyard of negative thoughts and bad attitude and the garbage that you put in there, or your mind can be a treasure chest of positive, God-honoring thoughts. But you have to take those thoughts captive. You have to make a decision. And I'm not going to lie to you. It is a battle. It is the battle, my friend, but the choice is yours. And with God's help, you can change your thoughts. And by changing your thoughts, if you don't like where you are in life, it'll change your life.